We are presenting you something rather different from first sessions that we had today, and we were pleased really to see just now about this soil. Very good to actually comment on what we have as innovations with art. I think it's the best commentary that we can produce because it's still open and leaves imagination. So this was our attempt, an art research that we did together. Entropical, it's playing with the word entropy, obviously the second law of dynamics that defines actually waste. When things are just entropy, they are, we could say in economical language, an externality, so that it's just a waste. And entropy is also very interesting for cryptographers because it also measures according to the measure of Shannon, the algorithm measures basically the quality of random. So the random seed is what you always need to produce actually an graphic algorithm. You have prime numbers and random seeding the algorithm. So we play with this word because there are many references actually to indeed waste, and all what we are doing is also and again in the blockchain world producing a lot of waste. Or it's not, perhaps we can link it somehow to what is produced as entropy by other systems. So we could put it together with other systems, not. And then we try to look at it of what this means really in financial terms and also in practical terms. So we are talking about miners once again, but this is a rather different one. You'd like to explain what we are seeing?
So these are some miners, or maybe this is a mining body, mycelium, in this case of the oysterman. If you may know that fungi are the farmers, the miners of the soil. They can take things apart, they allocate, and they run the system of the soil organism. And in this project, we created a mat, a mycelium mat. And you can see a close-up of this mat here. It's produced with an urban waste material, a plentiful waste material, cardboard. Most cardboard, your computers came in them, our computers came, screens, all of our things are transported by cardboard. It's probably one of the biggest urban waste materials. It's used once, it might be recycled. It's difficult to recycle again and again, but it's a really good material for building. And in my work, I work with the natural world. I produce topsoil to make urban environments suitable for growing edible forests. That's a different subject, won't get into that. But one thing that needs to happen is the soil needs to be fertile, it needs to be fed, it needs to have a constant source. And that food source is organic material, and it needs creatures, fungi, for example, that can distribute those nutrients to the plants and the micro life that lives there. So this, you see some ridges, and in another image, you'll probably see that this is spelling out some words. The title of this part, installation, is called 𝕤𝕠𝕠𝕦𝕙, which is obviously play words realpolitik, and is playing with the notion of pragmatism.
Yeah, and it's playing with an obvious, as I said before, let it come, let it happen in our eyes, and let us comment on what is really conflicting what we are doing. Now, between me and Deborah, there is not really a very romantic relationship. There is also what we can define a very artistic conflict, which is the definition of what we really are doing and how is that contributing to the world, in fact, and how is that contributing to value circulation. So you can talk about use value and actual use value and exchange value, like the same conflict that is often discussed in economy. We like to actually frame this of conflictual yet romantic dialogue into this artwork, which is called 7 Layers. It's a very imaginative artwork. It plays with words, but also with idiolects, with domains. On one side, you see 𝕒𝕒𝕗𝕗𝕗𝕗 layers, what engineers use to define systems. And on the other side, is 7 layers from the permaculture practice, in which Deborah is an expert, that is actually defining how in an edible forest you need to have like these layers to cover the ground and maintain humidity down. So it is usually quite intriguing for engineers to go into these sort of analogies and find out the analogies, yet the huge distance that in our mind these two semantic idiolects have. They are very far apart, and it's hard to reconcile really the roles of these things. So we frame this in an installation, 𝕤𝕠𝕠𝕦𝕙𝕗𝕚 indeed, which is showing a setup in which mycelial mats, inoculated spores, are trying to grow out of the heat produced by monarch miners from butterfly labs, namely the first miners ever produced out of ASICS boards. We deployed some actual original butterfly monarchs, and they were mining away for more than a month in the park of the Amstel Park of Amsterdam in these 2 months, in this pavilion. And they created some into this room, and we tried to see if these mycelial mats could survive in it. Now, it's not only an experiment, a functional experiment. It's obviously not a functional experiment. We wanted to put people into a situation of facing how somehow far apart is really the possibility to contribute between these two worlds. On the other side, we wanted to create also a commentary on modern industrial practices that are fairly possible to connect, for instance, agricultural production with computing. And there are some experiments in Europe of combining agricultural setups with the heat that is produced out of density data centers.
But also the conflict in value in producing topsoil, something so incredibly valuable, necessary in terms of carbon storage. We live in a time of climate crisis. The necessity of storing carbon not up there where it doesn't belong, down in the soil where it absolutely belongs, and water, of which in some parts of the world have too much at certain moments, needs to be stored down and in our ecosystems as a bank. Slowly when we need it, and when the entire ecosystem of which we are a part needs it. This value conflict between something so valuable upon which we will need to survive and learn much better how to work with. And this technological financial realm, which is so highly valued, possibly and definitely overvalued. And it's something that we all need to remind ourselves every single day, that the materials to build our computers, all of our technological flow, it comes from the earth. It comes from the soil, it comes from contested lands. It's mined by human beings, very often under slave labor conditions, and metals that are problematic and poisoning to get out and to refine. So it's all about extraction and refinement. And we have example in front of us, the fungi, that do a magnificent job of allocating nutrients and extracting and refining in a really beautiful way. They're doing it all the time. We have this example in front of us. One thing you also see here, because it's so abstract for people to think about the soil, not just for people like us, even for soil scientists. Soil science has undergone an immense transformation in the last 30 years, so it's very recent. It's a really quickly evolving discipline. So to bring this note what the soil is home, just on a small level, we introduced this tempeh. Does everybody know what tempeh is? It's a food from Indonesia, usually made by combining soybeans and letting them ferment with a specific kind of fungi, Rhizopus oleifolius, that makes a tight mat and slightly metabolizes the beans so that humans can take these already nutritious beans and they will be even more nutritious. Nutrients have been converted by this magnificent, once again, action of the fungi so that they're more valuable. And it's an analogy for the soil in which the grains, the mineral particles, the organic particles, and all the creatures living in the soil are together by these mycelium and their glue in the soil, glomulin, and tempeh, this white mycelium mat. So we introduced this as a workshop, but also into the installation.
It's a way to remind the crisis of the financial sector nowadays that is not reflecting anymore the production dynamics. So you have values created on the financial market that are so acted and so far away from the actual production dynamics of things that we hardly related nowadays to the conditions of production of something like food, which is vital to us, should be of our primary interest. You don't even need to be really altruistic to understand how important is food for us. Yet food is one of the things that is most undervalued, be it for various financial factors and conditions and subsidies themselves, or market conditions. So how far we are actually understanding the time, the love, and the attention that is needed to produce good food for us. And on the other side, the enormous attention, the enormous exchange value, indeed, that it's given to completely abstract processes. So we try to say it in an artistical way, try to open a question more than giving answers, and trying really like emerge this sort of what we believe it's a rather hard core conflict whenever we talk about technology, whenever we talk about production, welfare, of education, of actual value for us all, how far away we are going when we talk about yet more apt systems to build markets. And the open question is probably there for all of us, discover how we can really bring these worlds back together, bring some sort of sense into the enormous value that these digital processes have, and the very little value on the market, yet high vital value for all of us that other processes like soil production have. So you can see the artworks, some of them depicted on this website. They've been traveling around. Deborah has been served as an artist in residence by the Center for Contemporary Arts in the Natural World in England. So another series of screen prints of spores has been traveling through England for the last year in various exhibitions, and we are visited by a gallery, staff room called in Amsterdam, which is pretty interesting, and we wish they know about your work, yes, which is fantastic as well. The gallery is selecting some activist artworks to pitch them also to the art market. So we will have an exhibition and a fair in December in Amsterdam at the Center for Politics and Culture in Amsterdam.
December,
Thank you.
December 2 through 5.
Yeah, 2 through 5. So, to conclude, beginning after this presentation, I guess we are all tired, you can excuse us. We wish to thank all the team AL for organizing this fantastic day that brought together very different contexts. Hopefully, we will stay in touch. Thank you.